Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show. Another exciting show and definitely another exciting guest. Today, we're going to really dive into that beast mindset because I think everybody has a different way of defining it within themselves. Today's story is a must because I follow this young lady's journey on social media and my flowers go to her because this is truly that beast mindset. This is that resilience that we often hear about when we watch such movies as Rudy and other inspirational movies. Let me go deeper with this young lady. She has something on her social media that caught my attention. And I'm going to read this to you. Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through him. That's deep. On the show today, we have the beautiful Vicki Joy. Vicki, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Andre. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, and thanks for having me on.
I'm going to ask the question before we get into your journey. That was on your social media page for a reason. Explain that before we get started.
It absolutely was. For years, in my profile, I had Vicki Joy, author, researcher, poet, writer. Like I just had a few words of description as to what I do for a living. And after several years, I realized that I wanted my profile to be Christ-centered, not Vicki-centered. If people find me on social media, they're probably looking for me and they probably already know I'm a writer and an author. Who cares? The most important thing, if someone gets onto my site and they only see 3 seconds and they see that profile, they're going to hear the gospel because my stuff doesn't matter. My stuff, there's no eternal consequences if people don't know who Vicki Joy Anderson is. There's eternal consequences if you don't know who Jesus Christ is.
Wow, that's powerful. Let's go back. Tell me a little bit about Vicki Joy before we get into the accomplishments and, more importantly, your mission moving forward.
So I was born in 1972. And at the time of my birth, Andre, I was told, my parents were told, Vicki is brain damaged. She's mentally retarded, which was a politically correct, accepted term in the 1970s. Vicki will not probably live past her second birthday. She will be nonverbal. She'll never speak her own name. She's blind. And I didn't realize really until well into adulthood that whether they realized it or not, they were speaking that over me. And they were wrong. By the grace of God go I. I can see, maybe not the greatest, but I can see. And I made it all the way through college without getting held back in any grades. And I actually think that in comparison to most people in the world, I've got so much to be grateful for that I should never utter one complaint about any of the trials I've been through.
Hold that thought for a minute, Vicki. Hey, you guys see that's moving? Hold on, Vic. Okay, we just cut that out. I was like, I'm looking at the screen going, something's moving. Okay, so let's cut that part out. Okay. So I get what you're saying. In the 70s, and you was a baby or infant, you hadn't developed what they considered, you wasn't developed enough to really get any other diagnosis like you just said. What I like to get is what was your parents' reaction? I'm pretty sure they shared the story as they saw a change in what the doctor said as you evolved into the beautiful woman that you are? What was their mental state like? What did they share with you what they had to go through?
Yeah. My mom, her testimony was brutally honest. She told me that when I was first born, because the birth defect was unexpected, she was devastated. She was afraid. She worried about shame, and there were crushed hopes and dreams. And the the hospital wouldn't even provide baby pictures of me, Andre. The photographer came into the room, and my mom told me that the photographer looked into the isolette and said, "You don't want a picture of that," and turned on her heel and left. I have no baby pictures. And in fact, I had my first surgery at 10 days old. So by the time I got home and you see the first pictures of me, I've already had reconstructive surgery. So I don't even know what I looked like when I was first born.
Vicki, let me go here with that. What you had is rare. I can imagine your mom and your dad, especially your mom, really blaming herself for what happened. Now, did your mom have any contributing factors to what you wind up suffering? Well, not suffering, what you wind up having.
I don't think I've ever gotten a straight answer on that, Andre, because all we were getting from the doctors was guesswork. I don't know if this statistic is still accurate, but in the 70s, hypertelorism, which is my facial deformity, hit 1 out of every 100,000 births. So it wasn't super common. And I think that my mom did feel that it was her fault, and there were plenty of women in the grocery stores that would say the same. Everyone just assumed my mom must have been a drug addict or something like that. I don't know, other than the sovereignty of God, because I believe that I was knit together in my mother's womb just like everybody else. That's not a Bible verse, just for cover models, right? Uh, but we also wondered, my dad was a jet engine mechanic in the Air Force. And so he was inhaling a lot of airplane, fumes and things like that. So we've sort of speculated that that might have been part of it,
So you guys were basically trying to come up with your own hypothesis, but
basically.
no concrete evidence on what had actually transpired. So let me tell the viewers who don't know medical terminology what exactly is what you wind up having.
Yeah. Hypertelorism, it's actually really fascinating. It shows just the handiwork of God in knitting together babies in the womb. I did not realize this, but at one trimester of development, one side of the face develops, and it develops on the back of the head. At another trimester, the other half of the face forms, and then it slowly moves to the front of the face and fuses together. And this is where we get symmetry. And symmetry is really, from a psychological, neurological standpoint, symmetry is how we judge how beautiful a person is. The more symmetrical a face is, the more beautiful they are considered. And so when my face fused together, it came together not all the way and somewhat crooked. So I lost the symmetry in my face. And you can't tell now, but at the when I was born, I had a massive protrusion of flesh, like a big bubble coming out of my forehead. And that was why I had surgery at 10 days old. They were trying to determine if brain matter had seeped into that, because they couldn't take it off if the brain was in there. And so there was no brain matter in it. So they cut that whole piece off, which is why I have a scar that runs up on the forehead. That's where they cut it. I was born, Andre, with no nose whatsoever. There were 2 holes in my face. This is 100% skin and bone graft reconstruction.
I was getting ready to say that usually when you have that, the nose is like the last part of the coming together piece.
Yes, yep. I had a partial cleft palate. You couldn't tell from the lip. My lip was fine. I had a partial cleft palate that got repaired later in life. I didn't have bones in the roof of my mouth and such. My eyes were on both sides of my head, and they actually, when they cleared out all the excess cartilage, it was amazing, Andre. I got to see this surgery on television. I got to see like a video of it. I have a scar that runs from ear to ear, and if I have my hair pulled back, you can see just this halo of a scar tissue across my head. They sliced me from ear to ear and literally pulled my face all the way down, exposed my skull, and removed all of the cartilage and pushed the eyes to the front of my face. This was a revolutionary surgery invented by pioneer surgeon Tessier, Dr. Tessier from France. He's now passed. And he came over to the United States, talk about the providence of God. I was living in Minnesota when I was born. My doctors had no idea what I had, what the name for it was, what to do about it. Dr. Tessier, a couple years before I was born, flew to the United States and he trained 2 surgeons how to do this reconstructive surgery, one in Seattle, Washington, and one in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And 1 year after I was born, knowing nothing about any of this, my dad's job relocates him to Pennsylvania. And he happens to work for a company that paid 100% insurance on well over $1 million worth of surgery that I had for 15 years of my life. So from one perspective, you can look at, oh, poor Vicki. Oh, how can God be loving and compassionate when there's kids born with diseases and birth defects? But I will tell you, Andre, from the second I was conceived till now, God's hand has been on me, and he has given and given and given and given. He doesn't take away all the suffering and all the trials.
Right, right.
But I'll tell you, if I had to write a journal of all of the things that Jesus has done to show his kindness for me, I would spend the rest of my life writing and I wouldn't touch it.
Let me go here. You have the doctor that comes here and trains 2 other surgeons in this craft of facial reconstruction. But let's go back a second. They don't even know what you have. So how did these doctors even? Let me go here. Thank you for the download. This is what I'm talking about. How do you even know who to refer you to if I don't really know what you have? I know you need facial reconstruction, but I really don't know what the classification of that facial surgery is, because people need to realize if you do medical terminology, you can be classified in all different kinds of categories. You have all the symptoms of a total reconstruction and reconfigurement, because some of your body parts haven't fused together, or they have never formed during birth. You know what I'm saying? So how did these doctors even come to you?
Yeah. So I was born in Minnesota, and those doctors said, we have no idea what this is. And hey, they just wrote me off. She's going to be dead in 2 years. So
Right.
they weren't offering any sort of solutions or surgery or hope of any kind. A year later, my dad relocated because of a job. So at that point, they brought me to the hospital for my 1-year checkup. And that hospital was one of 2 hospitals in the United States that knew by looking at me, this is hypertelorism.
Wow. Let me go here. How old were you when you got to this hospital?
1 year old when we went to Children's Hospital, Philly.
And how many surgeries were needed when you got to that hospital?
So over the course of 15 years, I probably had close to 30 surgeries, which if you know anything about facial deformities or reconstructive surgery, that's a fairly low number compared to some people. But at 15, here's what happened at 15, Andre. They finished all of the reconstruction. Like, this is all the stuff we have to fix so that you're not in chronic pain, or so that, you aren't developing as you grow older wrong and whatnot. At 15, it got to the point where they were going to move from the reconstruction to more of like the plastic surgery.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Yep. So I'm 15, and 15-year-old girl. You're in high school and you're starting to get interested in boys. I mean, like, remember what it's like to be a teenage girl, right? So this would have been the time where I should have been like really excited about like now we're going to get to the good stuff and they're going to fix this and we're going to fix that. But Andre, the Lord had already over the course of 15 years developed such a bizarre life perspective and character in me that by the time I was 15, I told my parents, if all the reconstruction is done, everything that's going to cause pain or sorrow or headaches later on in life are corrected, I'm happy with the way I look. I have friends. I have my driving permit. I'm going to college. I have every single thing that a quote unquote normal girl my age would have. And I really don't want to keep sacrificing every single summer and all of the recovery and the money and the insurance. And um, I just want to get on with my life. I am happy with the way I look. And I'm still happy with the way I look, Andre. And you know what? Never once have I regretted that decision or gone back later to see if there was more that could be done. I'm content with this. This is the face that has looked back at me in the mirror my entire life. I don't want to look in the mirror and see a stranger. And really, Andre, I don't get teased and made fun of and stuff all the time. I mean, you got the jerky stuff on social media, right? There's always the people that have the Frankenstein, Freddy Krueger, comments, right? But here's the deal.
That just shows you the level of you would think and I'm getting pissed just thinking about that. You would think in today's society that human beings can, instead of ridiculing what you got, how about asking a fucking question?
True,
Like,
true.
how did that educate yourself? But we'll be more kind to our fucking animal than we would a human being. You let's go back a little bit. You dealt with bully, but I think the bully, and I don't know the story, so don't correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to put myself in your shoes. And I would simply think that being a former school teacher, kids can be brutal when they're are misinformed or not educated on what you have. Prime example, I'm gonna use my friend. I won't mention his name. You know who I'm talking about. Um, and we're still good friends today. He had a rare skin disease, and it smelled really bad.
Mm,
He was one out of so many people in the world that had this. I didn't even know what it was, but he was my friend. And I remember people would just like talk about him but at the end of the day, he was my friend. And I educated myself with his parents. What is wrong with him? What he said. It wasn't whatever he had wasn't gonna kill me, but he walked, he talked, he studied, he played sports, and but I still heard how ugly even high school kids could be towards people with that. How did you overcome that? Because even when I look at him, and I mean we're friends, we're still friends to this day. I can only imagine. I used to imagine what he had to go through.
yeah, yeah. Oh, it's been a lifelong journey. And Andre, this is the one thing I have social media to thank. Uh, it's been a good litmus test for me to to gauge how thick my skin has become and how forgiving I am of those people. The things that are said about me on social media that would have just absolutely obliterated me in junior high and high school. It's in one ear and out the other now. And so then I wind up thinking, oh my goodness, I have overcome this. And so it actually makes it, I actually go away instead of feeling bad. I go away feeling, I hate the word empowered because it's abused, but I do because I realize this is an area of my life where I've been healed because my identity doesn't come from what people think about how I look. And I've also come to understand, and I know this sounds cliche, but it's really true. Those comments, Andre, are a reflection of the heart of the person speaking. They're not my reflection.
Right,
It's not,
right.
it's not what my mirror is telling me. But it was tough. The only reason why I can say that it doesn't impact me anymore is because I know who I am. And so I'm not looking for feedback. I'm not looking for people to help me sort out who I am. I know who I am. And the the phone lines are shut. I'm not looking for other people's opinions now. I know who I am. And I'm happy with who I am. I'm content with who I am. I don't want to be someone else. I don't want to have someone else's face. And when you have true contentment, because I think contentment is a really hard thing to latch onto in this world, and I think it's a gift if you get it. And one of the things that all my hardships have done for me is it has forged contentment in my character. And when you're content, you can brush off a lot of other people's discontent.
Have you, what kind of feedback have you been getting on social media? Because you are a unique individual. 15 surgeries, overcoming a lot of misinformation. Now we live in a digital world where everybody's coming out. Everybody has a story, a beautiful story. But what are you finding outside of the let's call it the people who don't understand what looking in the mirror looks like? What kind of good feedback are you getting from people as far as curiosity? What kind of questions are they asked?
I have been absolutely blown away. I wish junior high Vicki could have gotten a glimpse into a time portal because we always think we know what everyone else is thinking about us. And what we're usually thinking is, I'm going to take the 5% of the most negative things that were ever told about me, and now I'm going to extrapolate it that that's what everybody's thinking. And what really surprised me about social media, because I expected all of the Frankenstein, Freddy Krueger kind of comments, and I've gotten a handful of them. I am shocked how gracious and compassionate and encouraging so many of the people are. And Andre, I talk about a lot of controversial topics. I talk about things that tend to make people heated, and that's not why I'm talking about them. But when you're already talking about something that makes people nervous and uncomfortable, like demonic stuff and spiritual warfare and sleep paralysis and AI, things that you're kind of asking for it, like you're a target for people to hit below the belt. Even with all of that, I find that 90% of the people out there are so loving and kind and supportive.
Let's talk about that for a minute. And yeah, I looked at your stuff. I thought I don't have a filter. Oh my God. Yeah, you're definitely that beast for real. Let's talk about these things, the spiritual uh um and the things that have put you in that situation to talk about all this. Are you speaking from experience? Like how did this even, because you just came out of an awakening moment of yourself, coming to the realization that you are happy being who you are. But now you're going into a whole different side here, from being blessed to sleep paralysis, demonology. You don't took the bull by the horn. Like, what brought this on?
Oh, wow. So yeah, I did. I had sleep paralysis for, 40, 41 years. And I just believed, well, first of all, nobody talked about it until I was probably in my 30s. Because if you talked about it back in the 70s or 80s, you were schizophrenic or demon possessed, right? So you just kept that kind of stuff quiet. I actually didn't know other people suffered from it. You suffer this alone, and it's really not until the digital age where people have talked about it, where it's like, oh, you got that too? I think that sleep paralysis is common with childhood trauma because I think it opens up all of that negativity and fear and isolation and depression and self-loathing. And if you've got undealt with trauma, especially if it's related to rejection, it's just like a pheromone for the sleep paralysis experience. And so, um, I'm talking about it from personal experience. I probably never would have written about it, Andre, but when I found out that this is something that thousands and thousands of other people go through, I'm like, oh, well, I'm going to say something. And I started out with kind of a nice motive, like, I'm going to help people. I'm going to encourage people. I'm going to let people know you're not schizophrenic. You're not demon possessed. And this has to do with trauma, and let's encourage each other. So I started out with like a really nice motive. And that motive is still there, but it did then escalate into the more and more I uncovered about it, and the more I realized how the, official online narratives are really gaslighting the people that are struggling with it and isolating people from help.
What do you mean they
Uh,
say they're gaslighting?
yeah, so gaslight, meaning, um, these are these are people who are being targeted because they're vulnerable. But let's point the finger and like this is happening to you because you're evil or you're wicked or you're sinful because that's like everybody's explanation. And so not only are you suffering this alone, but now you have this label on you where everyone around you who doesn't understand it thinks you must be playing with a Ouija board or you must be really deep into some dark thing or you must be a really sinful person and go to your priest and repent and maybe it'll go away. And so you're just exacerbating the trauma and the rejection and the isolation on this person. And so the more people I talk to, because I've now spoken to hundreds and hundreds of people, I have a whole team put together. We do free Zoom calls every week. I'm on the phone all week with people who've gone through this. And the more stories I hear,
Give me a story. Give me a story. Give me one of yours, but somebody else, but don't give their name.
sure, sure, sure. So the most common story you're going to hear is that people wake up still in a somewhat altered state of consciousness. They're not fully asleep. They're not fully awake. They can't move. Terror is seizing them. Sometimes they see, but oftentimes, even if they don't see it, they sense something more evil than evil or more black than black in the room. And there's all sorts of psychological explanations. There's medical, there's scientific explanations, but nobody wants to really acknowledge the spiritual aspect to it because that's not scientific.
Let me throw my own personal experience.
Please,
That's mixed.
please,
I tell people we all are connected. So I'm gonna use myself in your story if you'll allow me to do that.
please do.
I lost my mom. Naturally,
Mm,
people that know my story, and we we relocated to Georgia, and I had I suffer from sleep paralysis. I didn't know what it was called, but let me break the story short. Every night, it literally terrified me to go to sleep. So me and my brother, he was little. We slept in the same bedroom because he was small, and I would literally be afraid to go to sleep. But when I would close my eyes, I would go into a dream state, and I know this may sound crazy to the listeners, but this is my story. This actually happened to me. And there was an image that would always come to me, and they were in white. Couldn't really see the face, but it was like, and it literally petrified me so bad that I couldn't scream. I knew something was there, but I couldn't scream. And I would see myself like altered state. I can see myself laying in the bed. So I don't know if I projected out of that body and stuff, but then I would go back to sleep. And this went on from my junior high, ever since I was maybe I was still in middle school, all the way to my mom passing. And I remember my senior year. I'm almost done. I remember my senior year. I just went to my grandmother and I said, "Look, something. This is like what I said. Something is fucking with me every night, and it's scaring the shit out of me, and I don't know what it is." And she said, "That's your mother. She's watching over you. She's trying to message you, right?" And it stopped when I was in my late 20s. I never will forget it. I was dating this lady, and she always kept the TV on, which I thought it was kind of strange. I've never been in a situation where people keep the TV on. And I had the most, it scared the living hell out of me. And I woke up, and I said, this has to stop. And it never happened again. But the funny part about it, she had the same things happen when her father passed.
Mm.
and she shared it with me. And I've never now, do I still have those paralysis? Yeah, every now and then, but I'm not afraid of it when it happens. So I'm trying to basically validate what you're saying based on my encounters here. So I do believe that we are still spiritually connected with the beyond, because energy never goes away. We're energy. I think people have the concept of thinking, okay, well, this is flesh, this dies off, but energy goes somewhere. I don't know where it goes. I'm not a astro scientist, or I'm not talking about the quantum realm, but we go somewhere, and we probably have that ability to come back and touch the loved ones, if or or people, if we're open to it. But go ahead and finish your story. I just wanted to share my part.
Yeah, thank you for that, Andre. Grief, deep grief is another avenue. It's another big open door where people who have never experienced sleep paralysis, if they're in deep grief, they're more susceptible to it. And it doesn't just have to be death of a loved one. It can be divorce. I get a lot of people that write and say, I never had sleep paralysis until I got divorced, because there's just all of that negative emotion and fear and anxiety and grief and anger and bitterness or whatever it is. And it is interesting that these things gather when there is powerful negative emotion. And so um, that's one of the kind of clues that's what the pulse that we have to constantly have our finger on is, why do these things gather when I'm in distress?
I
And
did
that
have
can be,
negative emotions. I was just get real. I'm a kid. I'm pissed at the world because nobody's able to answer that question. Why was she taken away? And I had that negative. I don't know if it was really negative. I think it was unanswered trauma that I was dealing with. I needed to know why, why, why. And until I turned the why into an acceptance, this is part of creation, everything seems to subside itself. Does that make any sense?
oh yeah, yeah, yep. So Andre, going back to your question, because I don't want to avoid the question, a lot of the stories I hear are very similar. It's kind of what I call the classic sleep paralysis. I'm held down, I can't breathe. But you do hear a whole bunch of different things, and the landscape is changing now. Now, especially with the younger generations, there's a different approach to the younger generations. The older generations, they just scare the crap out of us, right? The younger generation sleep paralysis is more like, let's draw them with honey instead of vinegar, because the older generations like us, we didn't have a platform to talk about it. We didn't have social media, and we were kind of children should be seen and not heard. And again, we were in a time where when you talked about that kind of stuff, you were either demon possessed or schizophrenic. So those of us that had it, we kind of kept quiet about
Yeah,
it.
you didn't tell nobody. They
Yep.
look at you like you crazy.
Yep. Now we have a different culture. Everybody goes online onto Reddit and tries to one up the other person for how scary theirs was, you know. And so now it's less of a covert operation. And so now what people are telling me about is, instead of demons and hatmen and old hags and red glowing eyes and alien grays, now people are talking about, I saw Darth Maul, I saw Gollum, I saw Voldemort. And it's interesting that the kids now, the apparitions that they're seeing aren't the traditional Shadow Man, Hat Man, but actual things that are coming right out of video games and movies. And you can go into a whole entire psychology of this, that if you go into ancient cultures and you go into other countries that have very well-rounded specific folklore, they have more specific names than America does. So they'll say, this is the banshee, or
Right.
this is the, there's all these names. And I think one of the reasons why America for the last 50 to 75 years has just had very generic names, like I saw a shadow, I saw a hat man, is because we spiritually as a culture, even amongst the church, we don't talk a lot about heaven and hell and the afterlife and death and spirits and demons and ghosts. We don't have a real fleshed out spiritual warfare dogma that's being taught in the churches. And so I think the reason why our apparitions are so faceless and nameless is because we haven't provided a folklore to back it up. But now the younger generations have a folklore because they're getting it through media. And so our shadow people are starting to get names and faces again.
I'm even hearing the point of where people are astral projections
Yes.
through the sleep paralysis and actually are teaching you to be comfortable and take it to another level. It's almost like the Doctor Strange multi-universe. They're learning how to not to take something that was taboo and kind of harness that energy and say, look, this may be cool if you do this, but you know what? You gotta, and I'm sitting there watching, okay, this generation is taking and giving instructions on how to take it to another level. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean, Andre, and I will tell you, this is what they don't tell you. This is the fine print, right?
Yeah.
Here's the fine print. For those of us who have had sleep paralysis our entire lives, we're talking 50, 60 years nonstop of this stuff, right? Here's what they don't tell you. Because you are in many cases being pulled out into the astral, or it's an attempt. Your story actually gave this impression as well. When you can see yourself in your bed, that's like
Yeah.
the separation,
Yeah.
right? And so what they don't tell you is that when you get pulled out of the REM state or the deep sleep state and
The
you're in
realm.
the astral realm, you are now not getting a good night's sleep. And this is why so many lifelong experiencers of these phenomena have chronic fatigue, because we're going to bed for 8 hours a night, but we're only getting about an hour of real sleep. And here's what science is now telling us. I have actually read case studies, secular case studies, where lifelong UAP abduction experiencers and sleep paralysis experiencers, by the time they get to be my age, they have chronic fatigue and they have all sorts of incurable autoimmune diseases because of all of the cortisol and the lack of sleep. And they also don't talk about the attachments that you can pull back into reality with you. And so it's fun when you're a kid and you're exploring and you're reality shifting and you're living out this like VR fantasy world in your sleep. But there is an aspect of this phenomenon that is also physiological and does carry forward into the flesh in the real world, such as exhaustion and chronic fatigue and autoimmune disease and mental illnesses and things. It's really not something to be toyed with.
It's funny that you shared that because I tell people Hollywood tells you all this shit. You just don't know what it's called. I said it's right there in Doctor Strange. Perfect example is that sleep paralysis and astral projection and bringing back things that he didn't know he was bringing back into different time portals that kept causing a ripple effect. As a matter of fact, if people remember the movie, they was asking who was the most dangerous person in the universe, and it was like Doctor Strange because he kept going out of his body, going to different things and bringing dream walking, bringing back different elements of things into this thing. Man, we can go deeper. You don't want to go there with me. We can go deep. We can go deep, Vic. Look, they ain't ready for this. They ain't
They
ready for this.
they are not. And imagine the people that tried to blow the whistle on this stuff 50 years ago.
Yeah. It
And
was probably
I'm talking about all the UAP stuff too. 50 to 75 years ago, people were institutionalized for talking about the Greys, and now we got the big Spielberg movie coming out, and all of these declassified files. And of course, Roswell. So now all these people that were called insane and whose lives were ruined for talking about this, and now they're just telling us like, oh yeah, you were right all
well,
along.
Vicky, they try to tell people during a movie called I think it's There Among Us with Ronnie Rod Piper, the wrestler, and he kept putting on the magic glasses,
They live,
and
yeah.
everything was different. And but this is how I look at what's going on today. People wasn't ready for that.
No.
at that time. People
No.
wasn't ready for technology. So I get it. Operation Paperclip and Operation Blue Book, all this stuff had to go underground because remember this, in the 70s when I was in school in the 80s, they were still teaching us that there were 7 planets.
Yeah.
I remember telling my teacher, there's more than 7 planets. I was labeled crazy. Seriously.
Wow.
He's crazy. I remember them telling my mom. I'm arguing with a teacher, telling the teacher, there's more than 9 planets, there's more than 12 planets. She said, how many? I said, there's probably zillions. But that's what I mean. We wasn't ready because they wouldn't even tell the teachers
Yeah. Yeah.
about things that we're talking about. I mean, but like you said, now here's the information on what the Gray said during Roswell. Here's what you call it said during, but they also show it in what's that movie, the Twilight Zone. You know what I mean? Like, but people like to be entertained. They don't like to understand that what they're being entertained is also giving them a message on what actually is taking place. Are you ready for the change? Is how it boils down. Are you physically, mentally, spiritual, ready to accept what the world really is about? And more importantly, like you just said, since we're talking about demons in the universe, what the universe is really about.
Yeah. Totally agree, Andre. Yeah, I always quote this line from the old U2 song Sunday Bloody Sunday where he says,
I love that song.
oh, isn't it great? It says,
Yes.
and it's true we are immune when fact is fiction and TV a reality. I mean, that just sums it up so perfectly. And, think about, was it the 50s or the 60s, the War of the Worlds radio drama? Remember that? People
Yeah,
jumping off buildings
Orson
and
Welles.
yeah, yep. So, and and that's really what's amazing, Andre, is how in 50 to 70 years we went from jumping out of a building for terror that the aliens were landed to CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind, where people are going out now and saying, we want to see, reveal yourself. And the Anunnakis are our progenitors. And we're inviting them at this point.
I think I always tell my daughter, man, you live in a great age of technology, of information. But what people now have to realize, and I used to be a history teacher, what people have to realize now is that we now have to rewrite history. But more importantly, we really have to rewrite. This is going to fuck a lot of people up, and I know they're going to hate it. But I want people to start learning how to be a critical thinker, not a fear-based thinker.
Mm-hmm.
You have to rewrite spirituality.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
You have to rewrite it and understand what its purpose was for. Even such things as the John F. Kennedy killing. Some people say it was because he wanted to really get into space. He wanted to. Who knows about the conspiracy theory here? But what I do know for sure is the young generation. This generation is now becoming light-minded. That they want to take on the challenges. They want to be the U.S. enterprise. They want to be the next mission to explore strange new worlds, seek out new technology. Let me finish this up. To boldly go where no human has gone before.
No
And I love
kidding.
it. I love it. I love it. And I love the fact that, despite the fact that you had to get the facial reconstruction, that at the end of the day, you turn out to be a very beautiful woman. You can read everything that the doctor said you couldn't do. You're doing it, and you've opened up Pandora's box to a world that those that are ready to hear it, your message, are hearing it. Those that don't, just get real, Vicki. They're not ready to hear it. You can't take everybody with you on the journey.
Amen. Amen. I always compare it to the fishing metaphor. You know what? When I dump a net into the ocean, I want that net to be overflowing with fish to the point of breaking, but I don't expect every fish in the entire ocean to get into that net. And I don't need every fish
Right.
in the ocean to get into that net. But for the ones that find the net, uh, those are the people. Like, hey, if they found me and they resonate with what I'm saying, then they're my people. I'm just looking for my people.
Let me go back and ask one more question. Let me go back and make sure I heard it right. Give me did we talk about an example of one of your people that called in? If not, let me let you rehash on that.
Yeah,
Experience.
I've heard so many stories. You think that I would be able to easily pick one out. And I always struggle to answer this question because I've just heard so many stories that they kind of just evaporate.
Has it been
Like,
more than 100?
oh, we're probably pushing close to 1,000 or more at this point. I've been on the phone nonstop with experiencers for 4 years now.
Then let
Um,
me go here. You don't have to give an example because me and you already gave great example. I gave myself and you gave yours. So let's go here. How many? What have you noticed with the callers as far as age bracket, as far as male and female, as far as elderlies? What are you? What kind of data are you getting?
so interestingly, Andre, the first year or two, almost everyone I talked to were women in their 60s and 70s.
Wow, interesting.
But I think that had more to do with the people that are the most comfortable being vulnerable,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And these were also people that had never had a chance to tell their story. But now that it's been several years, I think I've talked to people as young as 13 and as old as 80, and men and women. I've talked to people all over the world, the United States, Canada, Mexico, South America, Australia, New Zealand, Romania, England, Africa, South Africa, like you name it, all over the world. So this is something, you were talking about earlier, this whole quantum entanglement. We're all in this together. We are all connected. And I don't think that there is a culture or an era or a language group or a people group or a gender that has cornered the market on these experiences. These things have been trying to communicate with mankind from day one, whether you go into sci-fi lore, whether you go into science, whether you go into political declassified information, or whether you go into the Bible, back to Genesis 6 about the watchers coming down. And so if these things have always been trying to connect with humanity, they're not going to leave one ethnicity or one era out. I think I think from the beginning of time, this stuff has been experienced.
How much? How much extraterrestrial information is coded and decoded in the best-selling book of all times that people swear by?
I love L.A. Marzulli. He calls the Bible the guidebook to the supernatural. And unfortunately, once you start diving into the culture,
Mhm.
context, history, language, and geography of the Old and New Testament, you're not just reading it through 21st century Baptist lenses. If you really understood the culture and the context and the language, there is mind-blowing amounts of otherworldly supernatural events going on, occult type things, magical type things. And I'm not saying, that the Bible is sanctioning or approving these things, but Moses and Joseph and Solomon, they were living in the vicinity of the Pharaoh's courts and Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, these people that were building liminal portals between heaven and earth, and trying to, the whole Tower of Babel story with trying to enter into the throne room of heaven, which ties into today's things with Project High Jump and things like that. Because there is so much supernatural stuff in the Bible that I'll tell you this, Andre, when I start unfolding some of the supernatural aspects of the Bible,
Mhm.
it's when my Christian audience turns on me and starts accusing me of being unbiblical or practicing witchcraft, because we have been programmed as Bible believing churchgoers that everything that's evil is evil, and if you even talk about it, you're supporting it. And I I just can't stress enough
Mhm.
the the knowledge that has been lost, that those forefathers of the faith had. The things that Moses and Abraham and and Joseph and the sons of Jacob, the things that are talked about in apocryphal books like the book of Jasher, the first book of Enoch, the book of Jubilees. This stuff
What is
is
what is
mind
your
blowing.
take on the book of Enoch? I notice it's really drawing a lot of attention. I think people are now starting to understand that, you know, we need to question spirituality and its encounters with otherworldly beings, because the book of Enoch clearly is a space odyssey, to say the least.
Yeah, it is. So there are three books of Enoch: Enoch 1, 2, and 3. And Enoch 1 is apocryphal, and Enoch 2 and 3 are Gnostic. So for people who qualify as born again Christians and we only want to read the inspired by the Holy Spirit words, they would not put much stock into Enoch 2 or 3. And that gets into a lot of things that we would probably compartmentalize as Kabbalistic and things like that. Enoch 1, which is the one that's kind of blowing up now, that's apocryphal, and there's a lot of hair splitting and division amongst the Christian church as to whether or not that should be inspired scripture or not. It is still included in the canon of the Ethiopian Bible. I think that I don't want to speak out of turn. I've heard contradictory information as to whether or not it was included in early King James versions or not. And a lot of the scholars who don't accept it as inspired scripture will still say there's a lot of historical information to be gleaned from it. The book of Enoch is actually quoted in uh, the scriptures. I think it's in the book of Jude, and I think Jubilees is quoted in there as well. So I kind of fall on the safe side. I've read it and I love the book and I've quoted from it and I've gleaned a lot of information from it, but I'm not going to sit and get into an arm wrestling match over another believer as to whether or not it should be canonized or not.
And let's get real. The Bible has been canonized. I mean, you got to call it what it is. Constantine knew what he was doing when he destroyed the Library of Alexander. You know, at the end of the day, it's a political move to keep people to think the way in which they're thinking today. And luckily, a revolution is coming that people are understanding. There's more to this than meets the eye. The book is like really unraveling. Let me ask you one more question before we wrap up. We seen not only yourself take a stand with your spiritual journey and kind of wakening people up. What's your take on Billy Carson?
I will humbly admit that I have not heard the name.
Then I'm gonna let you know what that's gonna be your homework. Then
Okay,
we're gonna have you come back and we're gonna talk about. I like to get your insight on that
awesome.
since you already went down the rabbit hole.
Challenge accepted. I love it.
So my next question is, with all that you've gone through, and I like the fact that you say, you know what, I like the person in the mirror. At the end of the day, I have to be the one to accept it, accept the accountabilities, and I'm wearing the suit here. What should the viewers get from just your journey? Because at the end of the day, this is yours. You came here alone. Well, we came here with other people. We just don't know them all. But you're going to leave with other people. But the whole thing is, this is your journey. What should people get from this?
There's a lot of people out there struggling. I think if you put a spiritual magnifying glass on everyone's heart and mind and brain, most of us, whether we admit it or not, probably suffer from some sort of trauma or rejection or hurt or grief or disappointment. Life doesn't go perfectly the way we want it to. Um, Andre, the thing that has shocked me the most in the hundreds and hundreds of people I've talked to, and I've talked to Christians, I've talked to Catholics, I've talked to atheists, I've talked to mediums and psychics. I mean, all types of people contact me. And the one thing that I'm finding is you can talk all day long about deliverance and casting out demons, and you can talk about family bloodlines and curses, and you can talk about Freemasonry in the family and witchcraft and generational Satanism. You can talk about all this deliverance stuff. And what I'm finding is lifelong sufferers of nightmares and sleep paralysis and paranormal activity and these sorts of things, the lifelong healing, the thing that completely shuts the door and gets these things off of our back, the harassment, it's not so much casting a demon out or throwing out great grandpa's Masonic apron. Where the real healing and victory and triumph comes is looking your rejection in the face, admitting, yeah, you hurt me and you got me down, but you're not in the driver's seat anymore. And you take those hurts by the throat and you strangle them to death and you determine, I'm going to have victory. I'm not going to be a victim. I'm not going to boast in my wounds. I'm going to boast in my scars because they're my purple hearts. They're my war medals. This is what made me strong. These are the fires that I was forged in. Rejection, I'm not a victim. If we don't deal with the fact that trauma and rejection hurt us, and if we don't come face to face with that and admit it hurt us, but that we are not going to let it control us one more moment, if we don't make war with our rejection, we will be defeated our entire lives. We gotta face this stuff, and we gotta get over it.
I like the way that was said. Vicki, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show. Before we wrap up, how can the viewers reach out to you and support you on social media?
Hey, thanks, Andre. VickiJoyAnderson.com is the best place to find me. On that homepage, it'll spread you out where else you need to go. I'm on Instagram, at YouTube at Vicki Joy Anderson, and Instagram and TikTok at Vicki Joy Author.
Definitely gonna have you come back and do that homework. You know what I'm saying?
Awesome. Love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, make sure you subscribe, share, like, follow, do whatever it takes to spread the message. All it takes is one click of a button to make a difference in your life or change somebody else's. Vicki, you definitely got that beast mindset. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another, and I do mean another, exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Creighton Show.